Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Scenes with Eric and Jared. We appreciate you being with us. Eric, thanks for joining again tonight. I know a lot of people, it's a busy time of year and Thanksgiving, a lot of people are with family. You can probably hear my kid screaming in the background as he's watching television. It's great to be able to spend time with family, but it is a little different this year.
Yeah, it is a little different, and I think a lot of that has to do with what state that you live in. Us being in here in North Carolina, we're having the same issues as well. Definitely on the Democratic side, they're telling you completely differently. Uh, it doesn't really matter if you're in New York, California, North Carolina. This year, it's completely different. It's don't hang out with your family, don't hang out with your friends. Vaccine's almost here. Just hang in just a little bit longer and there's a new horizon. But both you and I know that that's not always the case, and that's not the behind the scenes of what the Democratic Party's got in store for us. So
that's for sure, and it's especially Democratic held areas. We've talked about that, you and and I think it doesn't matter. North Carolina, and as you said, California, you name it. I mean, if your state is led by a Democrat, or even some of the Republicans, as they'd like to call themselves up in the Northeast. They're trying to mandate and say you cannot at all have Thanksgiving this year. And I think you and I both share the same view. Don't believe it's constitutional. Here in North Carolina, Governor Cooper trying to say that we can't go to someone else's house. We need to be just at home with people we live with. And if we do, we have to basically wear a level A hazmat suit to go out and see them. It's ridiculous. So I first of all, from us here at the Liberty Loft to everyone that's watching and listening, we wish you a happy Thanksgiving with your family wherever you may be. We want you to know that we certainly feel like that even in the midst of a pandemic, even in the midst of everything that's going on, you can still enjoy the season and enjoy the time. And we have so much to be thankful for. I know you and I have talked a little bit earlier today, just to share with anyone watching and listening. It's been an amazing year for the Liberty Loft. We've grown so much, and we have to say thank you to you for that. We realize that without the people watching and listening, we couldn't do that. And so, first of all, thank you for that, and we appreciate God's blessings on what we're doing and our work here. But want to wish everyone a Thanksgiving. So definitely want to go start talking about some other things, some things that we probably will not talk about on podcasts, things that we're probably not going to write articles about. That are a little bit different. So first, let's talk a little bit about the pardon that President Trump gave today. That's pretty big news that President Trump issued a pardon for Flynn.
And kudos for him for doing that. And I hope that that's not going to be the last one. I seriously doubt that it will be. I would probably tee up and submit to that Roger Stone's probably next in line, and a lot of others. And I don't blame Trump for this. They all kind of got thrown into the same thing with the whole Russia hoax. And I think this is, I hate to say, a middle finger from Trump back to the Democratic Party, but I'm in favor of it. Don't see any problems with it. And when the smoke clears, that is the right of the commander in chief at any point in time. It's completely no different than what President Obama did before he left. In fact, he kind of set record books as far as his presidential pardons. George W. Bush and other presidents before them have done the exact same thing. I don't see a problem with it, and I'm in favor of it. I hope that continues. But I hope as far as the pardons go past just his immediate circle and those of his close friends, I really hope that he really takes a strong look and looks at the criminal justice reform and those individuals that have nonviolent offenses and perhaps lifetime offenses, depending on where they live and what state, that he takes that and he uses that in consideration for his pardons as well.
I agree, and I think he will, no matter what. I think a lot of people took this and said, "Oh, President Trump is finally realizing this is the end of his term," and I think a lot of people were saying that with him authorizing the GSA to, start the transition. I think they thought that when he came out for that 1 minute presser the other day, they thought maybe he was going to concede or something. But I don't even think President Trump still is not admitting any kind of defeat. He still sees a path to victory. His legal team still sees a path to victory. So I don't think that's the case at all. I think one thing that's really interesting, one of our friends mentioned this in a group text to us earlier today, and I don't know if you picked up on it, but one of the things I thought was really interesting was pardon Michael Flynn and instill him as the director of national security again, or getting director of intelligence. And I think that's an interesting thought. I mean, can you imagine if we took Michael Flynn and the situation around him right now, and let's just fire the head of the CIA and put Michael Flynn in there? That turned that place upside down for the next minimum of the next 35, 40 days.
It would. And I think once, it depends on what happens with President Trump, whether or not he's successful in his legal challenges or not. And I know that you and I have had this private conversation, but I think the danger for the Democratic Party is if you really thought Donald Trump being president was dangerous to you and to the liberal establishment, having him as a private citizen, and I'll use Michael Flynn as an example as well. It's different when you're trying to crucify President Trump and use those closest to him to be able to do that. But imagine Michael Flynn as a private citizen. I don't think you've heard the last of him. And now that he's got that protection from the presidential pardon, I hate to say it's going to be kind of a tell-all book. Obviously, both you and I know that he's bound what he can and cannot say. But I think it's going to be very interesting moving forward. Should Trump not be successful in his legal challenges, what Michael Flynn just has to say to the American people of how this whole thing went down.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the Trump legal challenges. So let's talk about that for just a second. So article over to Liberty Loft wrote this afternoon talking about Trump. 2 key wins for the Trump legal team today, one yesterday, one today, one out in Nevada, where a judge ruled that they can present evidence out there. A lot of that is signed affidavits by people saying they witnessed election fraud and such. In Pennsylvania, a judge ruled that they cannot certify their election until these legal cases have been worked through. And I know the Democrat Attorney General in Pennsylvania has said that they're going to appeal it to the state Supreme Court tomorrow. So it's quickly escalating up through the chains. One of the things that I think was really interesting to me in the Pennsylvania case, and in Pennsylvania I think is key. If they can prove something in Pennsylvania, it's going to cast enough doubt that other states are going to be looked at a lot closer as well. But in Pennsylvania, 600,000 votes that were cast in this one dump of votes for Joe Biden, while there were 3,200, I believe it was, for President Trump. That's huge. That's a big deal. And the statistician that was there with Rudy Giuliani talking, I believe is what he was, said that the possibilities of that actually happening were nearly impossible. He said, as you're looking at the mixture of votes, even in the heavily Democratic areas, President Trump carried a lot of the votes. So 2 key wins for the Trump legal team. So what are your thoughts now that we've seen a couple of victories? You and I've talked a little offline. We've both shared our thoughts. What do you think about that?
Well, it's kind of a twofold thing. Number one, it actually doesn't help the Democratic Party in any way. Donald Trump needs this. If the Democratic Party wants to escalate this up to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, for example, that's a win for President Trump. But it's a twofold thing. Not only is it requiring the due diligence that is needed, but it's also closer to the United States Supreme Court granting cert and stating the fact that if it's escalated all the way to the state Supreme Court, obviously the next step is for it to go up to SCOTUS. So I think that's a win for President Trump. And then secondly, completely taking away the arguments of the Democratic Party, it is important that every single sworn affidavit is taken a look at. Because if you deny these individuals their right to their sworn testimony and stating the fact that they feel and they can prove as if that their vote was stolen, and you silence them, then you completely defraud the entire election process. So those are the 2 things that I think is either way, it's a win for President Trump. But I don't think the Democrats have really thought this through too much and thought that, hey, we can escalate it, we can appeal it all the way to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. But that's exactly what Donald Trump needs to be able to get that cert from SCOTUS. So I think that's a positive for him.
And I've shared this many times if you've listened to my podcast, and I know, Eric, you feel the same way. The key here is that he has to prove there are enough votes to change the election. It's not that there's just voter fraud. Everyone admits there's voter fraud. I don't think anyone would deny that. The Democrats can say that. The mainstream media will argue that, but who believes them anyway? No one does. We all know they're out here in the establishment arm of Joe Biden. But if you look at this and you watch what's taking place, there has to be enough votes included. That's happening in Pennsylvania. That's happening in Nevada. I believe they've found a couple discrepancies down in Georgia where it seems like that could be a lot closer than they thought. you prove it in one state, and especially in the case of Pennsylvania, 600,000 votes, that changes everything. And so President Trump's not out of this. I mean, this is not saying the election is over. People are talking on the mainstream media. You hear it right and left. President Trump's conceding. He's allowing the transition to happen. They're certifying votes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not over till it gets to the Supreme Court. That's where Trump is going. He's made no secrets about it. It's going to the Supreme Court. So you can't bank on a President Joe Biden. Yeah, the transition may be happening on the surface, but you're not banking on a President Joe Biden until it gets settled at the Supreme Court.
And I think that's the telling thing for the president-elect, or the office of the president-elect, which both you and I know there's no such thing. He can throw whatever he wants to back behind him and pretend like he's actually got a title, but he doesn't. I don't care if the AP gave him that title or not. But the most important thing is, and think about this, in the last president-elects, how quickly has a president-elect established so many key cabinet positions? I would imagine, President-elect Biden's going to have his entire cabinet done by, I don't know, Monday. I've never seen somebody trying to throw so many nominations out and creating some of his own. I don't know where he plucked John Kerry from, the ketchup factory, I guess. But, this guy is absolutely nonsense. And then all of a sudden he wants to create a new position for climate control. But I've never in my lifetime seen a president-elect come out with so many key nominations in 48 hours. So again, I expect him to move forward, and that's intentional, and it's methodical, and it's by design for him to throw out so much so then they can use the mainstream media to tell the American people, look, this is a done deal. Transition's already happened. I've got my key players in key cabinet positions. We need to move forward and try to digress away from the legal challenges of Donald Trump.
And it's just a short matter of time too that he starts naming controversial figures. I wrote an article, talked a little bit about a couple of the controversial figures. The one that he's named to be the head of immigration and such. He has got a significant history in the cages that Obama built. So they want to cry and talk about Trump putting people in cages, but he actually was the one there when they did that. You talk about some of the others. One of them is very much into the Black Lives Matter movement. She has promoted it. She has promoted racial division and racial tensions across the country as part of this movement. And he names her to the key post of being with the United Nations, ambassador to the United Nations. These are controversial, but the mainstream media says, oh, no, these are acceptable nominations. Now he's getting ready to get progressive. And I think that's what you've got to watch for. He's getting ready to start naming names that are going to scare you. And we're not talking little things. I mean, John Kerry being over climate control is scary enough. John Kerry is very much throwing all of his support behind the Green New Deal. Correct. So that should be scary enough. Biden can say he doesn't want to ban fracking. He can say he doesn't want to support the Green New Deal. But that is exactly what John Kerry is going to do. So you really have to take those things into account. Now, again, this is not saying those people take office. This is not saying that they would get approved. That the Senate, if the Republicans hold the Senate and they continue to maintain the majority, they could block that. I just don't. It is absolutely scary to think about some of these people and the progressives that are there.
Absolutely, and then I wouldn't say in my other life, but in my other career, being that in transportation and using Joe Biden, you had made mention of. His true intentions and plans of fracking. The transportation industry is geared up for that. And in my close conversations with those who are well attuned in the transportation industry, particularly in petroleum, they're scared about this. They know, they see the writing on the wall, exactly what's going to happen. They know they might as well get what they can when they can get it. So in case Donald Trump's legal challenges don't pan out, they know exactly what's going to happen to fuel prices. And both you and I know that too. And that's that hidden tax that Joe Biden doesn't want to talk about. Well, if you don't make any more than $400,000, you're not going to see an increase. No. You may not see an increase in your income taxes, but all the rest of the expenditures that you consume on a daily basis is what you're going to obviously see an increase in.
So you talk about that. So let's talk about the economic situation. So Seth's working on a series that's getting ready to come out, and I think everyone will love this, talking about some of the economic effects of a potential Joe Biden presidency. So let's think about this for just a minute. So you got Joe Biden that's out here saying that President Trump has killed the economy. President Trump's going to lose all these jobs. President Trump has hurt Americans. The fact of the matter is he hasn't. Gas prices are at year lows, probably decade lows, actually, at this point. He's made it more affordable to live. He's decreased regulations and increased competition. He's been tougher on the import industry, allowing American jobs and American industries to pick up. So you sit and you listen to what Joe Biden is saying, that he's going to build back better, which I think he found some 2-year-old to write that slogan, because that is about as ridiculous as anything I've ever heard. But he's going to build back better. Well,
should be written in crayon.
Yeah, exactly. We're already pretty good.
Yeah.
The problem is the pandemic. The problem is that the Democrats have shut everything down. The problem is not that the economy's bad. The stock market just hit 30,000, which is unheard of. We would have never thought that 20 years ago, that we would see 30,000 on the stock market.
And now the mainstream media is talking about that bump from the stock market because of the COVID vaccine. Well, 6 weeks ago, Donald Trump was talking about how the COVID vaccine was going to be a true reality by the end of the year. And here we are by the end of the year, but yet he gets zero credit for it whatsoever. And then when there's an uptick in the stock market, it's kind of to do with the COVID vaccine, but it's more so because everybody is loving the fact that President-elect Biden is going to be the new commander-in-chief. It's absolutely ridiculous. He gets zero credit whatsoever for he and his task force to get this streamlined vaccine in order.
And Trump is completely to get the credit for the vaccine. Correct. There's nothing about this that was because of Joe Biden. There was nothing about this because of the Democrats. Go back to what the Democrats wanted to do. President Trump said, we're dealing with a pandemic. Yes, we know we're rushing through a vaccine, but we have the greatest scientists in the world. Let's put them in a room and tell them, figure it out. And they gave federal subsidies to go out and do this and produced a vaccine in record time. Nothing has ever been done like this before. And I'm not saying these things because I'm a President Trump or die kind of person. I've criticized President Trump, but this is one thing he got right. This is one thing above all President Trump did right. He went out and put money behind this, put our experts behind this, and he said, let's go do this. And you know what he did? He developed a vaccine.
And it wasn't government that did this. It is
private
business and private industry that did this.
Yes, exactly. And much to the dismay of the Democrats, because all they wanted to do, shut it down. Just close it down. Just everybody stay home, cower in fear, go get your hazmat suit, go crawl in your closet and suck on your thumb, because that's the best this is going to be. Just be fearful for your lives. And that's not how we live as Americans. That we've never backed down from a challenge like this. We've never cowered in fear. We could have cowered in fear in World War II. We could have cowered in fear after 9/11. But no, as Americans, we have resilience, and we go and we fight. We go and we stand up, and we want to do better. We want to continue to do better. Unfortunately, the Democrats, they don't want to do that anymore. They don't want to be American. They want to give up on everything. They want to just go sit back and let the world lead while we suffer.
Correct. Yeah, it requires two things. It requires accountability and requires effort. Two things, unfortunately, the DNC doesn't have instilled in them. So,
well, that's very true. That's very true. So you were talking a little bit as we were just getting in here to chat before the show went live. You were talking a little bit about some new stuff about Joe Biden. So we've written articles. We've talked a little bit about Joe Biden and his gun tax proposal. So for everyone that's out there, we don't talk a lot about us personally. So we want to use these behind the scenes shows that you can learn some about us. So one thing, Eric and I both, and one of us is a lot more than the other, we're both very much firearms enthusiasts. Now, what I mean by that, by one of us more than the other, we both love guns. We both love firearms. We love target practicing. We love everything about guns. We love all the attachments. We love all the everything you can do with firearms. Sporting, competition, hunting. We love all those things. So you were sharing a little bit about what Joe Biden has got in store with some of his tax plans, and he just was recently talking about that. Share with everyone a little more about what you heard.
Yeah, so the rumor is, and it's verifiable as well, that President-elect Biden is going to move forward with a $200 stamp for all classifications of firearms that he deems as assault rifles. Both you and I know that liberals in America today love to classify everything as an assault rifle. In fact, they try to change the wording of AR to stand for assault rifle, and of course that is not the case. Assault rifles in a lot of states, used in Virginia as an example. In the state of Virginia, their communist governor has stated the fact that if it can hold or has the ability to hold 10 rounds or more, he deems that as an assault rifle or an assault weapon of some sort. But Joe Biden's direction is this. Joe Biden wants to put a $200 tax stamp on every classification of gun that he deems as an assault weapon, as well as a $200 stamp for every high-capacity magazine. High-capacity magazines would be in excess of 10 rounds. So for all those individuals that have pistols or rifles of any sort that are in excess or have the ability to hold more than 10 rounds, this is the direction that the Democratic Party, headed up by Joe Biden, is attempting to do. Which is insanity.
So now, Eric, you have your FFL. So that's what I mean when I said earlier that you are probably a little more into the firearms than I am. I have plenty of firearms, but not my FFL. So as you're thinking about that, when we're talking about this tax stamp, share a little bit with those that are watching and listening. This is not just a tax stamp that encompasses you pay for one and you have it all. This is a tax stamp that will require you to do that for every piece or every article that you own. And we're talking thousands of dollars for just the average firearms enthusiast.
Correct. The stamp and the tax process came back into the late 1920s, early 1930s. And really it was a way for the government to put a control on organized crime. So for example, if you wanted to go out and you wanted to buy a Thompson submachine gun, back in the late 20s and early 30s, $200 was a lot of money. And they did that intentionally to deter individuals from just going and being able to buy a submachine gun. Unfortunately, because of gun legislation, and I am in favor of some gun legislation, the right kind, I do not have a problem with individuals having to show identification to purchase a firearm. I don't think that's wrong. Also in favor of individuals having to show identification to cast a vote. So I don't think that that's lunacy on either way. So I think if you're going to require identification to cast a vote, there's nothing wrong with showing identification to purchase a firearm. I think that's just the right thing to do. But the whole goal for this $200 tax stamp, again, was to deter individuals from being able to go and buy submachine guns. Well, that tax stamp has not changed in any way since the late 1920s, early 30s. But again, it's per individual purchase. So if you wanted to go out and you wanted to purchase 10 AR-15 30-round magazines, you would be required to fill out paperwork, get that submitted into the federal government to get a clearance, and then in addition to the cost of the magazine, you would be required to purchase that and put a $200 stamp on each individual magazine. So,
yeah. So let's talk about that for a couple more minutes here. So, first of all, I don't think that's enforceable. You know, he can claim what he wants, and Kamala Harris, his running mate, has said she wants to force mandatory buybacks, and I think that's what Joe Biden would probably include in this.
Sure.
I think it's going to be a situation where he says, you know, you pay the tax or you will buy it back from you, but that's not that's not in the best interest of American citizens at all.
Sure.
If Democrats have their way, what they want you to have as an American citizen as a firearm is a single shot firearm. And essentially, then you cannot protect yourself against criminals or military. I mean, let's just think about it. I mean, if the military of Russia or China wants to invade, you're not able to defend yourself because you've got, I mean, basically we're going back to the Revolutionary War with muskets at that point. It's crazy to think about.
The whole reason for the Democratic Party, it has nothing to provide protection against you and I committing crimes against each other. It is, if you take away the right of the American people to protect themselves, the Bill of Rights is our way to be protected against the government. It has nothing to do with your protection versus me. It's our protection against the United States government. The whole goal for the Democratic Party is to make you completely dependent on them and defenseless against them. And that's the whole reason behind it. And you know, when you take someone, you make them wholly dependent and defenseless against what it is that you want to do, you got to become subservient at that point in time. So that's the end game. That's the end goal.
Yeah. So if you're watching the show, Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, Twitch, you can comment and talk with us live. I'd love to hear you and share your thoughts. Tell us a little bit about what you think about that. I think that more than just Eric and myself, I mean, we're sitting here and we regularly go shooting. I mean, this is something, obviously now people have commented about my brace on my hand. I'm a little out of shooting capacity at the moment.
You didn't shoot yourself, right? That wasn't
I did not shoot myself, but we talk about this a lot. We love to go shooting. You and I shoot regularly. So we're talking about this, and you hunt regularly. This has drastic effects on the things we do in our lives just for fun, recreation. And none of that has any bearings on none of Joe Biden's plan has any bearings on anything other than to eliminate people like you or myself from protecting our families or potentially protecting ourselves from a government that becomes tyrannical and wants to take over.
Correct.
And that's what Democrats are worried about.
Well, look at every successful tyrannical government, dictatorial government, totalitarian government. The very first thing that they do, it's not necessarily in this order, control the media, disarm the people. That's all you got to do.
It's really insane. It's one of those things that we knew that that's what Joe Biden was going to do. He can say whatever he wants, that he's not going to come after guns, that he's not going to do, and that is exactly what he's going to do. So it's just a short matter of time till he cracks down even more. They're going to force these mandatory buybacks. So it's coming. So we have one person that commented, Eric, and I'm going to toss this question to you. Coming from YouTube, it says, talk about the SB pistol brace and the ATF. And the second comment said the ATF has made some changes getting ready for a Biden presidency. You want to talk about that a couple moments?
Yeah, the ATF, again, is going after the pistol braces. Same thing with the honey badger as well. They were going after that. The issue is that unfortunately, just like every other government regulation, the ATF has not kept up with how firearms have been produced. And really, there hasn't been a whole lot of clarity since the 1994 legislation that was headed up by President Clinton at that point in time and Democratic-controlled Congress, which is kind of what we're leaning to as well. That's why it's so important that the Republicans maintain control of the Senate, disregard of the House. But for real gun legislation, buybacks, taxes, disarmament, things of that nature, if the Democrats get in power in the White House, in the Senate, and in the House, that's very dangerous. But I think a lot of the issue is with the ATF is the interpretation of the SBA or the SB pistol braces, things of that nature, and what constitutes a sawed-off or an alteration directly from the manufacturer. But now you are targeting specific manufacturers who, for the longest time, have produced these types of adaptations to firearms, or ones that are in shorter length, and they've been doing it for quite some time, whether it be 10, 15 years without any issue. And now all of a sudden it's the interpretation of the ATF. And bear in mind, this is under a Republican president, and the ATF has already made these determinations. Imagine what the ATF would do in a Biden administration. So I think that's the real concern there.
No, I think you're right. And I think that this is something that President Trump remains in office. He probably would take issue with. I think he would direct people to investigate and potentially change that. He's been very firearm friendly. He's been pretty much every conservative cause he's been friendly with. And so I think this is one that he would definitely take up and look at rolling back or addressing if he stays in office.
And if I can too, I think over the last 2-3 years, definitely since Trump has been in office, the Democratic establishment has done everything they possibly can to attack the NRA, to completely bankrupt them, delegitimize them as a gun advocacy group. And then who steps in after the NRA? I know on personal side as well, I always agree with the lobbying efforts of the NRA, but they are still the largest advocacy group for gun holders and gun owners. And I think that's been the Democratic stance is let's get rid of them, let's bankrupt them, let's delegitimize them. And then who else is going to step in other than private citizens? But we really do need a lobbying group, whether it's the NRA or someone else, to step in.
Yeah, certainly. Well, let's talk for just a few more minutes before we end the show today, and we'll still take your questions and comments, even though we're kind of moving on to a different subject. So wherever you're listening or watching, please don't hesitate to comment. So obviously, coronavirus, big deal. We talked about that at the beginning of the show a little bit. We talked about a lot of the governors that are putting up these insane restrictions on their citizens here for Thanksgiving. Cases of coronavirus are on the rise. You and I both have had some interesting conversations about that. So one thing, we talked about the vaccine that's coming out. If you're watching, wherever you're watching, I'd love to hear, is that something you're even interested in? Are you interested in taking the vaccine? Do you trust that? Or is that something you're going to wait on? So if you're watching, listening, please comment. Let us know your thoughts on that. Done a lot of research. I have a healthcare background. I've done a lot of work in healthcare for many years. And so I've done a lot of research into the vaccine, and I do think there's potential benefits there. And I probably would trust the vaccine more from the ones that President Trump has promoted versus the ones that Anthony Fauci has promoted. So let's just be honest. But as we start talking about the coronavirus and the cases, it's rampant and it's concerning, but we're still seeing a 98% survival rate, but we're shutting down with insane lockdowns and shutdowns across the country. I do not believe those are constitutional. I think that we have every right to request that people do take precautions to protect themselves. You're not going to see me. I'm not going to sit here and tell you have to stay 6 feet away from me. I have people that have gotten closer than that, and I'm not going to sit and fuss at them. But on the flip side, you got to be sensible. I mean, if you've got underlying conditions and all these other things going on, yes, this virus could kill you. Tell us a little bit about, I know I talk about it a little bit more on my show and a little bit more in my writings, but I know some people have mentioned this. Tell us a little more about your thoughts.
Yeah, so I don't take government direction very well. Unfortunately, in my career or my firearms business, unfortunately, it's just one of those things that you have to do. But I am very much in favor of individual liberty. We have that right. But I think it's very, very concerning when we get to the point, and I don't want to be cliche, but President Trump has mentioned it numerous times. The cure can't be worse than the problem. We live in a free society where you're free to choose. And honestly, free will, both you and I being very religious individuals, you have free will. God grants you that. And it's whatever you decide to do on this end of that is what's most important. Unfortunately, some people can't make the right decisions for themselves or for their families. That's the reason why we have rampant welfare programs here in the United States, because unfortunately individuals make the wrong choices. But I'm very much in favor of individuals, and I trust individuals. I think people are inherently good. I think that their intentions are good. And I think as a free society that we are, they have the right to be able to make those best decisions for themselves and for their families. But again, the cure can't be worse than the problem. And when we're talking about a disease, granted, it's taken a lot of lives, but again, if we're talking about a disease and a virus that has a 99% survival rate, is it worth the 350 million Americans to put their lives on hold? Is it worth them to lose everything that they've got, lose their homes, lose their businesses, things of that nature, for the sake of 300,000 people? I have a very hard time understanding that. And the last time I checked, majority rules. In any great republic like the United States, majority rules. And unfortunately, that's not a callous way of me looking at it. God be with those individuals and their families that have lost their life to this virus. But ultimately, that's the truth.
I think the thing that really bothers me about the coronavirus, and just being honest, is that we have failed to really, truly put the blame where it should lie.
Correct.
And we have allowed it to divide us, even on the conservative side, beyond measure. And what I mean by that is, first of all, this virus is not President Trump's fault. The left wants to blame President Trump for this, but if you remember, he was the one that wanted to shut the travel from international countries down to keep it from getting here. He wanted to completely turn it off. So we have to take that into account. It's not his fault. It is China's fault. China is completely and totally responsible for the coronavirus. The second thing is, though, that it tells you a lot about conservatives, that even though they want to claim they don't trust the mainstream media, they claim they don't trust the left, they still listen. And that concerns me. They're still listening to what the mainstream media says. You know, if you look at the numbers and you look at the evidence, it's just not there to say, go shut everything down and everybody cower in your home for 6 weeks. The people of the country also haven't taken the step to make logical decisions on their own. And I think that's as concerning as well. You know, you mentioned that. Let people make their own decisions. I'm all for that. We have the ability, and we should be supporting individual liberties, individual rights to be able to do those things. I should be able to decide if I should safely go out of my home or not. I do that any other time during the day when I'm not going out for whatever me and my wife may be going out for. I make the decision. Right. Is it safe for me to go to the grocery store? Is it safe for me to go to the gas station? Is it safe for me to drive my car down the highway? We make those decisions every day. Are Americans not capable to make that decision on their own? And apparently, the majority of people, and this is pretty much anyone on the left, and almost half of the conservatives say, no, you don't have a right. That's concerning.
It is concerning. Yep.
So it's really divided us.
Yeah, and this is a problem that goes beyond the virus. If we submit to government control in this particular instance, where does it stop? I mean, I hate to again be cliche. It's a slippery slope, but it is. It's inviting the United States government and any government in this particular instance across the world. You're inviting them into everyday decisions for you and for your family. And all these decisions are where you can go to eat, where you can shop, where you can worship, where you can work. And all of these things affect your daily life. And if you don't take a stand now, you'll never be able to.
Yeah, and one of the things that, you know, I was talking with a local pastor or two that I know, and they were talking about church, and they said, what do you think about this? What do you think about California shutting down churches and North Carolina suggesting that churches shut down? And I said, the thing is, churches can safely function. They can safely operate, but we have to do it differently. You know, I think that for people that are high risk, we look at alternate methods. Do we live stream services? Do we do those things? And a lot of churches have done that. Do we have multiple services where we do a service that we distance everyone there to try to keep them apart, to keep the virus from spreading? But then do we do a service for people that are high risk and allow them to still come to church too? There's things, we get creative. I think that so many times as Americans, we get put in a box and we think this is the way we've done it. This is the way we always have to do it. And that's not the case at all. And I think that's one thing that President Trump has been trying to say through this is that, look, things are different now. The virus is different now. Things have changed. We've not had a pandemic in over 100 years. We've not had the technology that we have that now. We didn't have that technology 100 years ago when the Spanish flu was coming around. Times are different. Things have changed. We cannot sit here and just say, well, we want it to be the same as it's always been. Let's adapt. Let's innovate. Let's overcome this. And so many people are saying, no, not interested. I'll just give up my freedom.
Right. Yeah, and that's concerning. But, you know, the motivating factor for the Democratic Party is use that fear. Fear is a great motivator, but use that fear intentionally to scare people. And then while you're scaring them, stifle their creativity. In anything bad, there's always going to be something good that comes out on the other end. The sun will also rise tomorrow. And as you overcome and as you adapt, where there's businesses that close, there'll be new businesses that open. That's just how things work. But intentionally trying to scare people stifles creativity. That's exactly what the left wants. Exactly what the left wants. Because then the only opinion that matters is theirs.
Absolutely. And as we're talking, we shared a little bit, you said you're not a great rule follower from the government. You know, there's some rules that we both believe are absolutely okay for society. I mean, obviously, we drive on the right side of the road, and there's laws that state in the United States you should drive on the right side of the road. Right. We get that. There's some things that make sense. But one of the things that does not make sense is some of the new rules from our governor here in North Carolina, Governor Cooper, who will not let me go visit Eric's house without, as I said at the beginning, wearing a hazmat suit. Essentially, that's what he would want. I would not be able to go visit my parents as this whole pandemic stands now. And this is no different than what's being done in California, New York, and some of these others. In fact, there's a lot of states that had these laws go into effect today just for the Thanksgiving holiday. So as we're thinking about that, Eric, and we're thinking about how different Thanksgiving is, have you changed anything in your family for this year? Has it altered your mindset at all about Thanksgiving?
Absolutely not. Today is my mother's birthday. We're going to celebrate that. We are all going to get together for Thanksgiving. Governor Cooper, if you're monitoring this, not going to change a thing. I'm still going to get together. We're still going to go down. We're still going to go deer hunting for the weekend. Not going to change a thing. And I think there's a lot more people that feel that way. They just need to have those other individuals push them into the right direction. But what I can't stand is for individuals in glass houses to throw stones. Look at Governor Gavin Newsom, who got busted 2-3 weeks ago, $450 a plate dinners and no social distancing at all. And it's him and his comrades that are head up of the Health and Human Services of the state that are all together at the same table. No social distancing, no mask wearing, and he stands up there and he says, "Sorry, got caught, not a big deal." And then in 3 days, he's putting the hammer down on the citizens. Like, come on, man, you can't do that.
Well, same here in North Carolina with Roy Cooper. So
absolutely.
Roy, his daughter just got married, and then miraculously after her wedding, he announces a new executive order to put the rules on citizens. So it's really interesting how this has all been happening.
Yeah, they don't even buy into it, but it's just a way for them to control. But as far as for me and for my family, we're not going to change a thing. And it's one of those things where, am I breaking the law? No, I'm not breaking the law because unfortunately his executive order in my eyes is not a law. Sorry, brother. You lost out on that one.
It's not a law and it's not enforceable.
Correct.
That's the other thing. A lot of people we see on social media, they're saying, don't call the law on your friends for, the executive order. I want to say I saw something about 60 or 65 of the sheriffs across the state of North Carolina have all said that they have no ability to enforce this law and would have no desire to enforce this law. I think a lot of people, again, it makes sense if you've got underlying conditions and issues that you make a change. There are people in my family that have decided that they're not going to partake in Thanksgiving this year like that they have in the past because they have cancer or have had other issues going on. I have no problem with that. I support that. That is their decision, and they have every right in a country that we stand and have been founded on having individual liberties and rights. They have that right in that decision, and I'll support that 100% because they made that decision. It shouldn't be a situation where a governor is sitting here forcing and mandating a decision on their behalf. That's what I have a problem with, and I think it gets a little out of hand and a little out of control.
And it's not going his way. I know you and I have had these conversations as well. And I'll use Governor Cooper as an example. He is absolutely livid that his executive order is not getting exactly what it is that he wants. He stands in front of the citizens of North Carolina last week and paints this pretty little paint by number picture for them and tells them, look, we're going to color code your counties in the state. So if you go from yellow to orange to red, you're going to know exactly where you stand with COVID infections. What he's not telling the citizens of North Carolina is this, that the data that we're getting from these counties are going to go directly to my administration. Trust us in our math. We would never lead you astray. But the numbers that we come up with, then we're going to take this data and we're going to tell local legislators in those counties that are color-coded red, this is what you're going to do. And if you don't, there's going to be financial repercussions for that. So the next step for Governor Cooper, and other states will soon follow in line, is if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, and this covers local law enforcement, sheriff's deputies, municipalities, the legislative boards, whether it's county commissioners, mayors, he's going to tell them that, look, I'm going to override you with executive order because I can. And in states like in North Carolina, the courts have upheld that, unfortunately, in some instances. But also I'm going to withhold desperately needed COVID money that I can control, and law enforcement's not going to get it. Emergency personnel is not going to get it. Fire departments aren't going to get it. Local municipalities are not going to get it. And the hospitals that are desperately needing that funding to stay afloat are not going to get it. And I'm going to compel local counties to do what I tell them to do, or you're not going to get paid. And only then does it become critical mass, because once you start playing with somebody's money, completely different ballgame. And that's what's up next for North Carolina.
No, and I completely agree. And I know there's some people out there, we have followers in all 50 states, and you hear us talk a lot about North Carolina, but let me point out one thing to you about this. We talk about Governor Cooper, but one thing about Governor Cooper is he is very well connected to the Democrats of New York and the Democrats of California. He's not doing this on his own. He is coordinating with them. They have talked about this. We know that Governor Cooper has went to New York and has went to California and partnered with Newsom and partnered with Cuomo in fundraising for his reelection campaign. So he is very much coordinated with Democrats. He was very much on a first name basis with Joe Biden. They are coordinating these things. They know exactly what they're doing. So this is not something that we're talking about this just being a little thing in North Carolina, just a psychotic governor that we have that is out here creating rules as he pulls them out of the hat. It's almost like he and Obama's appointee, Mandy Cohen, who is the DHHS lead in North Carolina. It's almost like he and her.
She's rumored to be a front runner as well for a Biden position. So,
and I hope he takes her. If that's the case, we'll gladly give her up from North Carolina. But it's almost like they go in a room and pull something out of the hat and decide what crazy rule are we going to come up with this week. Oh, right. Now you've got to tie your shoes the opposite way this week, and that'll save you from the coronavirus. I mean, it's getting insane, some of the stuff that they're doing. But we talk about it because it does matter. It is a national issue because they are very well connected. And I mentioned those big three because as far as size of states, North Carolina has really grown. We have a really large representation in Congress now, and it continues to grow as a state. And it's becoming every year, it seems like in the elections, a battleground state like some of these others. They continue to move it. North Carolina used to be reliably red, and now it's becoming more and more blue each year. And so it's really concerning as we see that, but it's because of leadership like Cooper, like Cuomo, like Gavin Newsom, that is causing this transition as they've been in office.
And North Carolina is one of those states where we're starting to see a mass influx of individuals from California, from Arizona, from New Jersey, from New York. And I think that's what's really turned our state in the last 10 to 12 years from a solid red to semi-purple, leaning more towards blue.
Yeah. Well, I know we're getting up close to our time. We appreciate everyone that has listened and followed us today on the show. Again, we started off and we said we hope you and your family have a great Thanksgiving, and we couldn't mean that anymore. We're thankful for you, for watching, for listening to the shows. As a reminder, you can hear more from Eric. You can follow him over at the Closet Conservative podcast. We may have some exciting announcements in that coming up in the next month or so stay tuned for that. You can also subscribe and listen to the Jared Dyson Show that comes out several times a week. New episode came out today, so be sure to check that out. We both bring a lot of interesting insight to both shows, very different. And we're going to be back with another live show. One thing we've worked on, and I think some of the people that have commented tonight will really enjoy, I want to invite Bree Warner, and she's a really good friend of ours, Bree Michael Warner, over to the show again. She's been on both podcasts as a guest. She's a firearms instructor and trainer up in New York. Yeah, she's very much on top of the firearms issues. A lot of the women she does classes and training for women. She's phenomenal. And I'd like to bring her on one evening, and we might try to see if she's available next week to see if we can do a live show with her and talk a little bit more about these firearms issues and things that are going on. We have a lot more guests that we're working through as well that will be joining us between the podcast and some live shows. So please stay tuned. Please continue to follow. Please share as much as you can. Please tell everyone about what we're doing here. Again, we appreciate your support. We wish everyone a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Eric, anything you want to say before we go?
No. Again, happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. And in 2020, why this matters so much, despite all of the issues that we've had on a national basis, on a global basis, and a household basis, if we should ever need to get together and be thankful for our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, this is the year that we need to do that. So I'm not going to sit back and allow some communistic governor to tell me what I can and cannot do. I only answer and bow down to one person, and this is the year we need to get together and thank our blessings for that. So,
I shared that. I shared that on the podcast, my show that came out today, and I shared, even amid the pandemic and even amid the craziness that's happened this year, we still have so much to be thankful for, the mercy and the faithfulness of God and what He has done for us. So, absolutely, we hope everyone will take advantage of a few days to be thankful. A reminder that while 2020 has been a interesting and horrible year for a lot of people, God has still been good, and God has still blessed and provided for us faithfully, as He always does. Thanks, everyone, again for listening and watching. We hope you have a great holiday, and we'll see you back again soon.